They're calling it a third intifada, but is it helping the Palestinian cause? I'll ask Chief Negotiator Saeb Erekat, and we'll debate drones with Glenn Greenwald. I'm Mehdi Hasan. Leaked documents suggest the US government doesn't know who it's killing in drone strikes. So, do drones create more terrorists than they kill? That's our debate, featuring Glenn Greenwald. But first, as the death toll continues to climb in the latest round of violence in Israel and the occupied territories, has the Palestinian leadership failed to protect its people? Earlier, I spoke to this week's headliner from the occupied West Bank, PLO Secretary-General Saeb Erekat. Saeb Erekat, thanks for joining me on UpFront. You're chief Palestinian negotiator, you're President Abbas's closest advisor. In your view, are we witnessing a third intifada? And if so, is the Palestinian Authority 100% in support of it?
I'm not sure what to call it, Mehdi. I'm not sure what to call it. It's very mature, but what's going out there is very deep. I believe what's going out there is that I am 60 years old, my president is 80 years old, 60 plus. Amongst Palestinians, we constitute 4% of the population, Mehdi. And I think our generations have realized that we had brought them no peace, no statehood, no freedom, no independence. And they have seen with their own eyes the continuation of the Israeli dictation, settlement activities, collective punishments, war crimes, extrajudicial killing. And they took to the streets to face the cry of Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, saying chains, and they're responding to him by saying freedom. And we are fully supporting our people in their cry for freedom.
The Israelis say you're both inciting violence and that you're not sufficiently condemning the violence. How would you describe the knife attacks and car attacks on Israelis in recent weeks? Surely they're acts of terror.
Well, Mehdi, the point is here is how many Palestinians were killed in the last 15 days, if I recall. 55 Palestinians.
And that's wrong, but I'm asking you about the Israeli deaths that are being blamed on you. I'm asking you, do you condemn those as acts of terrorism?
No, look, Mehdi, we don't condone the killing of people who want to make peace. We want to save lives of Israelis and Palestinians. That is the truth. The question that people should ask, not the insufficient questions. What do you do? What do you think of this? What do you do as scoring points against us? The point is, what lead Palestinians to do what they're doing? It's one factor. When Netanyahu manages to take the hope out of their minds, when he, for God's sakes, yesterday absolved Hitler, Adolf Hitler, acquit him, makes him innocent. I'm going to come and blame it on the Palestinians.
Outrageous.
All right?
We both agree that's outrageous.
And that's the question that we put to the whole world.
Okay.
What kind of prime minister in Israel do we have?
We both agree on the prime minister of Israel.
Our people?
Hold on.
What kind of extrajudicial?
Hold on, it's an interview, not a speech, Saeb. 1 second. I want to ask you a question. President Abbas said in his speech in September that the Al-Aqsa Mosque is ours and they have no right to defile it with their filthy feet. Who is he referring to there? Do Jews have filthy feet? That's a pretty offensive comment, is it not?
No, sir. No, Mehdi. Judaism is not a threat to us. Judaism is one of God's great religions, like Christianity and Islam. What the president was referring to is the pictures of the Israeli soldiers with their boots on the top of the holiest of holy in Al-Aqsa Mosque. I'm sure you've seen these pictures.
Okay, Israeli forces have been rampaging through the West Bank in recent weeks, more than 50 Palestinians killed, hundreds arrested. Why is the Palestinian leadership then, if you're so outraged by this Israeli behavior, why are you not doing more to protect your own people from the occupiers? You have security forces, you have men with guns. A lot of Palestinians are saying that our government, our leadership is not protecting us from the Israelis. What do you say to them?
What I said to that is that we are a people with no army, with no navy, with no air force, with no tanks. Yes, we have a small police force with guns, all right? And if we use a bullet against the Israelis, they'll use a tank. If we use a tank, they use a chopper. If we have a chopper, they use an F-16. We are a people under occupation. We are civilians. We are defending ourselves with our naked bodies. We have no tanks. And I did not find 1 million Muslim and Arab soldiers in my country here across the Jordan River wanting to help me and liberate Palestine and Al-Aqsa Mosque. And I told them, please hold back, Mehdi, Hassan, Mahmoud, don't do that, all right? So we're defending ourselves. At the same time, when Israel says, when leaders in the States or in Germany or Europe say Israel has the right to defend themselves, Israelis are not defending themselves. Israelis are defending their occupation, their settlement activities, their incursions.
And the Palestinians are asking, why are you not defending them?
Holy for us.
Saeb, 67% of Palestinians say the PA does not do all it can to protect Palestinians. 53% say the Palestinian Authority is a burden on the people. That's the Palestinian people saying that about you and your government.
We love our people. Our people are my sons.
They don't seem to love you right now.
And my grandchildren, Mehdi. Okay, they have the right not to love me right now.
So what do you say to them when they say, protect us from Israeli terrorism? What do you say to them?
And people, no, we're telling them we're doing everything we can. We are in the International Criminal Court. We are in the Security Council. We are in the General Assembly. We are in the Geneva Convention. We have requested international protection from the Secretary-General of the United Nations. And I'm telling them, I'm sorry. I don't have tanks. I'm sorry. My Muslim and Arab brothers are not with us. And what can I say? These are my children. These are my grandchildren who are dying in the streets, who are being jailed, who are being tortured, who are being killed in execution in the streets in daylight in front of everyone.
You and President Abbas are going to see US Secretary of State John Kerry at the weekend in Amman, Jordan, to discuss how to end this violence. When I interviewed you last year, you were telling me John Kerry was an honest broker. You were hoping he'd secure a peace deal. More than 18 months on, hundreds of Palestinian deaths later, a Gaza war in between, after another failed set of US-led negotiations. Do you still believe John Kerry is an honest broker and can offer you anything tangible?
I'm sorry, I refuse this insinuation by you, Mehdi, that it's John Kerry who's responsible for the killing of all these Palestinians.
Well, who arms Israel?
John Kerry
who
is
funds Israel? Who protects Israel in international forums?
Wait a minute. John Kerry tried his best to achieve a two-state solution. He and President Obama were foiled by Benjamin Netanyahu. He's not a partner, and he is a non-negotiator. There is a difference between someone being a tough negotiator and a non-negotiator.
So you've given up on negotiations with Netanyahu?
When he was given the choice between settlements and peace, yes, I think it's a waste of time, because the man wants to dictate rather than negotiate. When he was given the choice between settlements and peace, he chose settlements, not peace. And when he was given the choice between negotiations and dictations, he chose dictation.
So if he rang you up and said, let's sit down and talk, you'll say, no, I don't trust you anymore.
No, it's not sit down and talk. I want to hear Secretary of State asking Netanyahu, do you recognize the state of Palestine on the 1967 lines? Do you accept the two-state solution 67 lines? Will you stop settlement activities while you negotiate? Will you release the Palestinian prisoners? Will you accept to sit and delineate the maps? If he says yes, we'll do it. But if he doesn't say this, I think it's a waste of time.
You said in June that the Palestinian Authority would be disbanded by the end of this year if there wasn't a two-state solution. Are you ever going to follow through on any of these threats or ultimatums? I mean, isn't it now the time to end this charade of a pretend Palestinian government in charge of a pretend Palestinian state which gives cover to an Israeli occupation?
I said that Netanyahu's strategy is to make us a Palestinian Authority without an authority, and he did that. He wants a cost-free occupation, and he wants to keep Gaza off the limits of the West Bank, and he's succeeding because he doesn't seek a two-state solution. He seeks one state, two systems, apartheid. We are an authority without an authority, and yes, if that is, I said that's not sustainable, and soon enough Netanyahu will find himself the only responsible between the River Jordan and the Mediterranean.
Soon enough,
because he's destroying the Palestinian Authority. I think he had destroyed the Palestinian Authority.
You said December. In June you said December.
I think very, very soon you're going to hear some decisions. Yes, I said December, this coming December. And
will you disband the PA
I hope
this
that the
December?
Palestine National Council, which is the highest parliament, the PA, as was born to transfer Palestinians from occupation to independence, is being destroyed, finished by Netanyahu. Now, we're not going to be an authority by name. Yes, if Netanyahu thinks he can sustain the status quo, we're telling him you're wrong, and you're invited to assume your powers as the occupying power.
Saeb Erekat, thank you so much for joining me on UpFront. No discussion of Israel's illegal occupation of the Palestinian territories is complete without mentioning the land of the free. No, not the US. I am, of course, referring to Gaza. Didn't you hear? Israel's occupation of that strip of land, crammed full of 1.8 million Palestinians, ended in 2005 with Ariel Sharon's disengagement, apparently.
Israel doesn't occupy Gaza.
Israel pulled out of the Gaza Strip.
Here's the thing. The only people in the world who think Gaza isn't occupied are the Israelis. The United Nations still thinks it's occupied.
The Gaza Strip continues to be regarded as part of the occupied Palestinian territory.
Even Israel's bestest friend, the United States, includes Gaza under occupied territories. But given Israel did withdraw its troops and its illegal settlers in 2005, why is Gaza still considered occupied? Well, for a start, the Israelis decide who and what goes in and out of Gaza. With the help of their friends, the Egyptians, they control all the crossings. At one stage, the Israeli military wouldn't allow that well-known bomb-making ingredient, coriander, into free and independent Gaza. Okay, so Palestinians in the Gaza Strip can't just go on a road trip to Israel or the West Bank or even Egypt, but at least they can fly out of Gaza airport, right? Nope. Israel bombed it and has kept complete control over Gaza's airspace even after their disengagement. Maybe Gaza's Palestinians can go fishing instead. Wrong again. They can only fish up to 3 nautical miles off the coast before they get shot at. Israel maintains a naval blockade because Palestinians going fishing, that's obviously an anti-Semitic act of terrorism. So to recap, there is no occupation, but Israel completely, coincidentally, just happens to control Gaza's borders, airspace, territorial waters, and population register too. The Israelis literally get to define who is and who isn't a resident of Gaza. Occupation? What occupation? US President Barack Obama has said that before any drone strike is taken, there must be near certainty that no civilians will be killed or injured. Yet during one 5-month period, nearly 90% of people killed by US drone strikes in Afghanistan were not the intended targets. That's according to the Drone Papers, a new report by The Intercept based on leaked US documents. So, do drone strikes create more terrorists than they kill? I'm joined in the arena to debate this by Glenn Greenwald, best-selling author, award-winning journalist, and founding editor of The Intercept, and Christine Fair, professor of security studies at Georgetown University, who has worked in Afghanistan and Pakistan. Thank you both for joining me in the arena. Glenn Greenwald, you've been a long-standing critic of US drone strikes. You've said drones constitute a campaign of terror in places like Pakistan. What do the leaked documents published by The Intercept tell us that's new, that in your view strengthens the case against drones?
What they do primarily is confirm what the people in the regions where the drones have been killing people have been saying, which is that far more often than not, they're killing people not who are the targets, but who are actually innocent. One document in particular, the one that you just referenced, is one of the ones that made the source who has worked with these programs come forward, that has said that 9 out of 10 of the people they kill are not the targets. And you've heard this from people in Afghanistan and Pakistan continuously. You've heard it from researchers and scientists and other people who have studied it, who have said that the reason we're constantly turning more people into terrorists than we're killing is because the anger and rage from these innocent victims is what then causes people to want to bring violence to the United States.
Christine Fair, you've called drones the most successful tool that the United States and Pakistan have to eliminate dangerous militants. But if 9 out of 10 drone strikes are not getting the person they're supposed to get, how is that a successful tool? How is that not going to upset and exacerbate
I'm going to push
problem?
back on several things that Glenn said. Many of the statements that he just made are not empirically buttressed. Many of the people that write about this actually haven't been to Pakistan where the drones are actually used. And so you actually have this problem. We don't know who was targeted, and we don't know who was actually killed. And I'm going to argue that this actually isn't knowable with the tools that have been used thus far. There's only one journalist who's actually done this in what I think is the most empirically defensible way, and that's a journalist, Chris Albrighton with the Associated Press. He actually sent a stringer to Waziristan, and he began talking to the locals.
And what was his conclusion?
His conclusions were, with the exception of one catastrophic drone strike, which really was a humongous mistake, about 90% of the people killed by the locals said, the locals themselves said about 90% of them were militants. So we have a big difference of opinion between those people who are based in Lahore, you know, the cosmopolitan elites, who view drones as a violation of Pakistani sovereignty and all the legal issues that get raised. But when you are talking to the people who live in the proximity of the militants, they have a very different story.
Well, let me mention
one.
We've talked for a really long time, so maybe I can address some of the things that you actually said.
Let Glenn respond to a couple of the points.
Yeah, I'd like to. So I think
We'll come back to you in a moment.
there's actually a person who lives in the region who happens to be the winner of the 2014 Nobel Peace Prize.
Who doesn't know anything about Fatah.
You're talking about Malala Yousafzai.
Right,
She knows nothing about drones, and she knows nothing about
went
Fatah.
to
Drones are not using
the White
KKK.
House and spoke with President Obama, and what she said was not "thank you so much for using drones to kill the militants who put a bullet into my head and who are trying to suppress the rights of girls." What she said in her statement was, quote, "I expressed my concern that drones are fueling terrorism. Innocent victims are killed and they lead to resentment among the Pakistani people." It's what the same study, the same conclusions from the NYU Stanford study said, and the lead reporter on the story in The Intercept on drones is Jeremy Scahill, who has spent many years in all of the regions in which drones have fallen, including Afghanistan, Yemen, and Somalia. He made a film that was nominated for an Academy Award and wrote a 600-page book about dirty wars. There is abundant evidence that drones are killing innocent people. You have to be pathological to deny it at this point.
I guess all Muslim countries and all Muslim polities and all Muslim legal systems in Muslim countries are the same to you. I actually bring nuance to this. I'm sorry, I cannot accept
Christine, let me put some nuance to you. The British government did polling in Pakistan's tribal areas a few years ago. This is a British government on CIA drone strikes. They found in the tribal areas, 59% of the public in 2010 said they were never justified. That went up to 63% in 2011. Who knows what it is today? So the polling doesn't quite support what you're saying.
Actually, what you don't understand is how polling, I actually do a lot of polling in Pakistan. What you find is that a lot of people don't answer the question at all.
But the ones who do.
Well, but you're missing the science of this. This is called social desirability bias. Okay. So I'm going to argue, and that it's very difficult to do this well because the person doesn't know the person doing the survey work. Now, I also want to go back to the NYU report. I'm pro-choice. If Planned Parenthood did a study that talked about the benefits of abortion, we would immediately call the nonsense flag on that report. The NYU Stanford study was supported, facilitated in every way, shape, or form by FFR and Reprieve, which is an advocacy group avowedly against drones. They did not include any of the pro-drone voices. And I'm going
to let Glenn respond to you because you made a
I'm going to make my final point.
A quick point on my own question. The British government, though, are not an advocacy group against drones. So you dismissed the British government's poll as well.
I'm actually, what I'm telling you, again, the nuance may not be appreciated here. Polling work in conflict areas is very difficult to elicit the truth because the person does not know, is the survey person in question CIA? Are they ISI? Are they the militant? And actually the militant organizations...
So are you saying we can't know?
I'm telling you that you can't know, but I'm going to tell you... But I want to go to the point of Ababil.
Very briefly.
It is a very brief point because this speaks to how some people view the drones, which are very different from people like Glenn Greenwald. You're familiar with Surat al-Fil in the Quran, when an army of elephants attacked the Kaaba.
I'm worried this isn't going to be brief.
I'm going to tell you how brief it is. And blacks, you should know the Quran, I'm presuming, Surat al-Fil. So the black swallows who dropped stones to repel the elephant army that was attacking Kaaba, those who live in proximity to the terrorists, they call drones Ababil. So this is a voice that you folks try to exclude.
This is just rank propaganda at this point. You have this mountain of... Are you capable of remaining quiet while other people
you made a very long point. Let Glenn make his point.
There is this mountain. There's this mountain of evidence. You have the NYU Stanford.
Hold on, Christine. Let Glenn make his point.
You have this NYU Stanford study. You have the data of the Bureau of Investigative Journalism. You have the documents that were just provided to us by this source. You have the statement of the 2014 Nobel Peace Prize winner.
A 16-year-old.
You're not letting Glenn make his point.
Because she doesn't want it to be known that there's an abundance of data.
He's quoting reports. You can respond to the reports in a moment.
And then on the other side, you have someone who said, I am the anointed spokesperson of the Pakistani people. I went there and some have whispered to me that they like drones. Let me cite a professor at Georgetown University who is a specialist in South Asia, Sarah Waheed, who wrote in The Nation in October 2014 about Professor Fair and other cheerleaders for drone programs and what they're doing. And she said, quote, "The anti-human rights message is clear. The voices of people who live under the threat of drones are inherently unreliable, much less reliable than state officials or elite liberal Pakistanis who favor drone strikes. there is enormous amounts of evidence that because of the number of innocent people that we're killing, not just in Pakistan, but Afghanistan, Yemen, Somalia, but also in that region, that there is a great amount of anti-American sentiment. There are Pew polls, global polls, that show that 66% of Pakistanis disapprove of drone strikes, 3% approve it. That's the Pew Global poll from 2014.
Also mistaken.
And so all she does is attack all of the people, all of the researchers, all of the journalists, all of the defense officials who have said so.
Let me put this point back to you. You're saying the polling is, we're not being nuanced on the polling. You're saying,
hold
on, let me finish my question, then you can
Yes.
come back. You're saying Malala doesn't know what she's talking about. General Stanley McChrystal, who's not an advocacy man, former head of the US forces in Afghanistan, has said the resentment created by US drones is much greater than the average American appreciates. They are hated on a visceral level.
Senator McChrystal actually doesn't know Pakistan. And here I want to tell you something else. It's a very common bromide to say drones make more terrorists. Would you believe there's no evidence for it? But I'm going to tell you one thing for which there is very good evidence. The drone program in Pakistan has resulted in a cessation in certain kinds of attacks which are correlated with the drone strikes. For example, I'll give a very good example. The way the drone strikes work is that there's a concept of quality of terror in terms of the kinds of attacks that they can perpetrate and the quantity.
Okay.
Both the quality and quantity have declined.
Well, let me put that to Glenn.
I haven't made a point. The
You did make
TTP have
several
not
points.
been able to attack the
Let me
kinds
put
of
that point to
headquarters of the military that they did in the
Would you
past.
concede that in some areas, regardless of what you think about the morality, regardless of the innocent people getting killed, on an effectiveness basis, they are taking out people like Baitullah Masood, former head of the Pakistani Taliban?
It's
You
not,
would
just
concede that?
it's not just General McChrystal. Here's what General Michael Flynn, who ran the Defense Intelligence Agency, told The Intercept last week, my media outlet, about drones. Even when it works, even when we take out a big name, he said, quote, "It makes us all feel good for 24 hours. And you know what? It doesn't matter. It just makes them a martyr. They get replaced. It just creates a new reason for all of them to fight us even harder."
Let me ask you this, Glenn. Let me ask you this, Glenn.
Data.
Is there any
She
case?
says
He
everybody
has
in the
no
world
data.
doesn't know what
Put
they're
the
talking about
data
except
argument.
for her.
Put the
No
data
data.
argument to one side for a moment. Let me ask you this
Data is
question.
important. Data are important.
And we're arguing over the data.
These
You're
are called
rejecting the data
emotions.
that Glenn cited. We've established that.
He's citing opinion. He's not
No,
citing
I
data.
think that's unfair. I mean,
no, it's
he cited the New
opinion.
York University report. You
Yeah.
say you don't like the report, but
No,
it's
I'm
still
not saying
data.
no, let me tell you. Do you want me to tell you what's wrong
Well,
with
the New York University
that's
School
not
of
a
Law
report.
found
that is an advocacy-driven report. That's not the
So
same thing
everyone
as
is advocating except you.
I'm actually.
You're
what
the
I'm-
only objective source.
No,
I'm just
no,
wondering if
no.
New York University, Stanford
NYU's
University,
report-
the Bureau of
if
Investigative
General
Journalism,
McChrystal,
the top levels of the U.S.
Planned
military.
Parenthood did a report that talked about the
you made
virtues
that
of
point.
abortion.
But I quoted the British government and Stanley
Reprieve,
McChrystal to you.
FFR is an advocacy
never mentioned Reprieve.
organization, and you think that report is fine?
Okay, you've made
It's
that
not.
point. Can we move the discussion on? I want to ask
I'm
Glenn a
glad
question.
to.
Would you concede that in certain instances, for example, the killing of Baitullah Masood, leader of the Pakistani Taliban, by a drone strike in 2009, would you say, actually, that one I'm fine with?
I think that everybody agrees that there are certain legitimate targets for the U.S. government to kill. Nobody disputes that. That's never been in dispute. The problem is that we've been actually engaged in this global assassination program for 14 years now, and there's absolutely no sign that any of this is getting better. In fact, it's the position of every Western government that the
Why
threat
do the
of
Pakistanis
terrorism
still
that
support
the
the
threat of
program? Why does the
terrorism
Pak
is
mill
actually
still
worse
support
than
it,
it's
Glenn?
ever been. If you talk to people, for
Nonsense.
example, in Yemen, they will tell you that until 2009, there was no al-Qaeda presence in Yemen. Only once the U.S. began drone attacking and killing innocent civilians did the Yemeni population get driven into the arms of Islamic radicals.
I interviewed Ben Rhodes recently, Obama's Deputy National Security Advisor. He said it's a weapon of war. People die with a weapon of war. What do you say to people who say, why are you obsessed with the technology, with the method of killing?
What right does the U.S. government have to go around the world, meeting in secret, essentially accusing people of being terrorists, of committing crimes, convicting them in secret, no due process, no evidence of any kind being presented, and then simply deleting them from the earth?
The last several years, for me, what's been most dismaying is that the targets that we are eliminating in Fatah are not, strictly speaking, to my view, in compliant with the authorization for the use of military force. We are mostly using our program to kill Pakistan's terrorists. We are no longer killing individuals that pose a threat to us directly. Right?
Or to anyone.
Not only is she right about that, she is right about that. The documents that we released, I think one of the most significant revelations is that it's not just that the people that we're killing aren't direct threats to us in the way that the original AUMF authorized, namely the people who did 9/11 or those who are associated with them. A lot of the people we're killing are just local militants who are interested in the local conflicts, who are purposely targeting, not just accidentally killing, in a way that's way beyond what Congress ever authorized and what the American people probably would think is justified. This has become an absolutely a war that has absolutely expanded far beyond its original intention.
We're going to have to leave it there. We've run out of time. Thank you both for joining me in the arena.
That's our show. Up Front will be back next week.